Well, welcome everybody to CS Scholars. This seems to be going pretty well. This is our third CS Scholars. And again, seeing great crowds, great turnout, and great speakers, which brings us to the subject of today. Today we have Rob Schadey. Rob Schadey has got a resume longer than my master's thesis. So we'll just we'll take a few of the short ones here. Rob Schadey serves as the Business Mission Area Director for the U.S. Army Program Executive Office Enterprise Information Systems. That must be government, because nobody else would have anything that long as a title. In this role, he is responsible for integration, modernization of Army enterprise resource planning systems, a focus on enterprise initiatives such as cloud computing and data analytics. He has a very long list of very impressive awards and education. That's all out there on our website under the cybersecurity at Virginia Western. It's also in the announcement for those of you that are students. So I'm going to take the shortcut because I want to be sure we give him plenty of time today. I know he has a lot to talk about. As we do, please remember that we want you to mute your cameras and microphones, just because I don't want to have to chase you around and get you all to give me permission to let your images be on the screen. So thank you. And if you've got questions, please drop those into the chat area. I'll be noting those questions as we go. And as we have time, either during it if Rob takes a break or at the end, most certainly, we will work through your questions for as long as we can hold Rob down. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Take it away.
Hey, good evening, everyone. First and foremost, thanks for taking time here on this November 4th to help understand more about what opportunities there are in government service. And with that long list of everything that I've done, I'm here to tell you, you have a contact in government. So if you don't have anyone you know in government service or who has served in the military, you've got me to start working with or working from as a contact, a link to help you understand more and to ping on to get more information or detail if you are interested as we work through and unpack all of this information here tonight. I want to help everyone understand there are a ton of federal and DoD opportunities that each of you can work from or start from in terms of seeking out employment and opportunities with the government and federal departments. And first and foremost, you know, these are really just my details, my thoughts and approach for either internship or professional positions with the government. And again, if you have some sort of specialization, and let's, you know, take cybersecurity in particular, and you have different certifications and a 2-year degree, that may absolutely qualify you for a full-time position that wouldn't be an internship opportunity. That can lead to a path of promotion and a lot of other things that come with the benefits of being in government and government service. So full and open disclaimer, you know, this session and the advice, approach, views expressed are my own and do not reflect those of the Department of Defense. This session is being recorded and this is interactive. I'm here for you for whatever questions you have, and do not hesitate to interrupt me at any time for any questions or clarity as we're going through this. I want to thank Virginia Western for the CS Scholar Series and putting this on. You know, when Dr. Wolf and B reached out, I was absolutely interested in helping everyone understand, you know, how to move from academia into that professional world. And I think it's a really important factor to always pursue and do what you love, because eventually the money will come. And if it doesn't, at least you can kind of look back and say you had a really great time in terms of your career. You don't want to get into an area of discipline that you regret. So, with that, I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of working for the government and make sure that I'm setting you guys up with the best basis of understanding in terms of what you're getting yourself into. So, the first thing I would tell you is it's absolutely an opportunity to make a difference, right? Every one of the government employees that are serving in federal or DoD are paid by the taxpayers. And, I can't impart enough how much thought I put into cost savings, making sure we're as efficient as we can and efficient as possible. But for the most part, driving and making a difference in what we're doing, because every federal employee plays a vital role in ending either homelessness, supporting disaster recovery, supporting cybersecurity, keeping our food supply safe, like my neighbors next door who were part of the Department of Agriculture. There's so many different things within government that are really important and absolutely make a difference. The other one is, right, great benefits and competitive pay. Right, average government salaries are competitive with the private and nonprofit sectors. Top candidates in government, right, they work with experience and strong academic backgrounds. And I would say Virginia Western with the NSA certifications is a perfect launching point into right, getting a competitive salary, getting set up with internship opportunities, and can be a great pipeline into a lot of different cybersecurity agencies. Federal benefits are really very competitive, right? They include health insurance, retirement, vacation, and other differentiations depending on the federal sector you may be going into. The one thing I would tell you with retirement, there's matching, which is really tremendous. And then the big thing is there's actually a pension if you do retire with the federal government. And that's a pretty substantial amount of money. So while you may not make a ton of money, you still make a really good living. And if in the long term you're looking at retirement and those other options, right, you're going to have that to rely on. The other thing is location. There are federal jobs all over the United States and throughout the world. I was in the Marine Corps for several years before I made the transition to government service. I have Marine Corps friends in the Department of State who are in the civil service, and they're spread out throughout the world. So if that's something that interests you, there's tons of opportunities there from that standpoint. So there's ironically positions right there in Roanoke. There's positions in Christiansburg, right? There's positions up here in DC. So depending on the lifestyle you want to lead and the things you're interested in outside of work, there's a good opportunity there to find the right location for you. Interesting and challenging work. Some of the biggest opportunities I've had have been within the federal government. I love taking on a challenge. I love working through some of the most technical problems that we have. And I enjoy the people that I work with in those challenges that I've taken on. So, you can be involved in things that are very interesting, very challenging, and you can work, in similar partnerships with private sector, and in some cases on a really grand scale with a great impact, depending on what agency you go to and what program you're involved in. Right now, I do have a friend who's directly involved in Operation Warp Speed, which is having a huge impact on COVID-19 in terms of providing the logistics for the vaccine once it's created. Their sole focus is making sure that they can create the right pipeline and the right logistics through the military to distribute the vaccine. So there's all kinds of awesome, challenging work that you can be involved in. The other thing, again, is work-life balance. The amount of time you get off once you reach a certain point in seniority within the government is really great. I have the opportunity to telework, to do a compressed work schedule, and I'll talk a little bit about those things later. The final thing I would tell you is professional development and advancement opportunities. You get into the government, you prove yourself, you're going to move up. They want to keep, they want to retain, and they want to invest in you. And it only makes sense because we want the best, the brightest, and we know as government we have to compete with other industries and agencies to keep and retain talent. There are some cons, and I would be remiss if I didn't go through some of those. So, and I'm seeing a little bit of a difference here, but making a difference is a marathon, not a sprint. Ironically, I'm involved in the technology side in managing these business mission systems, which do our logistical and finance within the Army. I use agile methods, I use sprints, I use all of the latest types of management tools to help us maintain and keep our goals in place. So I'm here to tell you I've had not just an impact technically, but also on our organizational culture, which has helped make a difference. But for the most part, I will echo and tell you that if you're really interested in doing something very fast, the government may not always be the best place depending on the agency that you have to work for. The other thing, there's lots of rules and regulations that exist. That leads to how you would acquire or purchase things. It leads to the processes and the hiring that we'll talk through later. There's all kinds of red tape because it's government, and there's lots of overwatch. The hiring process we'll talk through, really important factors here. There's a lot that has to be done with respect to the way you put out an announcement, the key words and things that we have to look for, how we work through the selection, and then how we actually do the final hiring and actions that drag out for months, which I'll talk about. But the bottom line here is the hiring process is not always the most optimized, and it can take a while depending on the position, the agency, and the organization. I think I've hit on, you're not going to get rich, but you're going to make a very comfortable living if you are going to work for or be part of government service. And then this is a con. Leadership at the highest levels does change. And right now, today's November 4th, we still have no idea who the president would be. But let's say, Joe Biden is elected into office. There's what's called honorable positions or people in positions that are appointed by the president. Those positions are going to change, and that has an impact on those organizations and agencies. Any comments or questions on the pros or cons of government?
So Rob, we've got a question in, what is the main difference between working with a contractor like Lockheed Martin for the Army versus the Army itself?
That's a great question. So the very frank way of saying that or answering that question is the government's always going to be in charge. So if you want to be in a position of driving and basically being in charge and managing the government side of the house is the house you're going to want to be on. The other thing is, right, you're going to have that long-term employment. Contract positions are contract positions of periods of time, either 1 year, 5 years, right? Those types of opportunities are going to change. That's why they're contract positions. There's tremendous differences in the benefits between the different contract companies that we bring on board. I'm not saying that you can't, make a great living, but you may be in a position where the contract would be up, and then you would be, seeking employment with another contract opportunity or position within that company. So the pluses and minuses there are, having long-term employment and reliable, paycheck versus a contract position where it's for a period of time. It may be a great start to get your foot in the door, but I've had a lot of contract turnover lately just because of the types of contracts I have and the types of people I'm looking for those particular positions. But that's actually a really great question. Hopefully that answered that question. And of course, it depends on your situation, and it depends on really what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. Rob, we definitely have other questions coming in. Do you want to take them as they come in, or do you want to?
Absolutely. I think it's important to try to hit on them as we're going through this.
Great. Okay. So the next one, what is the best way to get an entry position within DoD, or do you require experience prior? Does prior service count towards years of experience if it's not in IT?
Prior experience would not count if it wasn't in information technology. And we'll talk about that as we go through the rest of this in this session. You've got to have a certain level of requisite experience or be part of an intern or pathways program that'll help get you that experience and picked up as a part of that government service position. So we'll address that as we go through.
Okay. Where can you look to apply for DoD positions instead of contractors?
We'll talk about that. I'm going to show, I'll show you guys the USA Jobs website, and we'll talk through the USA Jobs website, what it entails, and the way you have to think about and approach applying for a government position.
Do you have experience working at a city or county level for government versus federal level? Would you recommend one or the other? Is it better to get your foot in the door local before trying for federal?
I think that, so ironically, I just had an employee retire, moved to San Antonio. I talked to him yesterday, and the city of San Antonio wants to hire him to do contracts and acquisitions. So I think there are a lot of parallels there. If you are able to get your foot in the door with city or state, right, there's certainly an opportunity to use that experience and launch into a potential federal or DoD type of position.
Okay. That's it for now.
Okay. All right. So this is all Rob's perspective. Why did I do what I did? Right. Why did I go federal and into DoD? So number one, I enjoy serving in the public interest. That comes from my background being in the Marine Corps, right? Believing in our country. And then just being able to support what I think is the right thing in terms of my own personal job satisfaction and the satisfaction I need to really see in support of our country. I absolutely love the benefits. I have 150 hours of user lose that I have to take between now and the rest of the year. So right, those are the types of things that are part of being with government for a long time that I've earned and I really enjoy, because there's lots of family vacation time, there's lots of personal time, there's lots of time for me to grow in terms of just getting out and getting a fresh perspective on things, so I can change the way that I apply it into my work and with others that I work with. Retirement is pretty phenomenal, I think, compared to industry. And I do have time in industry. So, right, getting an employee match or employment match, and then also getting a pension is almost unheard of nowadays. And I know that getting back to the question about the difference between contract companies, right, and being a federal or DoD employee, that's a big difference, right? Getting that match is one thing, but then, you know, getting a pension check versus not getting a pension check is part of, right, what you would get as being a government service employee. And then education and training. If I need to send employees to training or additional academic education, we do it, we support it. I have a lot of employees right now going through training and getting degrees specifically for data science and data analytics. And we're doing that in partnership with Carnegie Mellon University. So those are the types of things that when they hit are a direct benefit for our workforce within the Army and within the agency that I work for. So those sort of things are really critical to making sure we stay on top of the latest and greatest with respect to technology, but then also making sure that our employees have all of that information that they can use and support as a part of what we're trying to achieve. Again, pay is acceptable, right? Stable employment, great workplace, right? I work with brilliant people. I have a lot of flexibility in terms of my schedule, telework, all those things. And again, I get to support and solve some of the most complex problems that we have. The other thing that I think is really important is government employees who do work hard and who are supporting the right efforts, they are recognized and rewarded for what they do. So with that, tonight, we're going to unpack and get through the federal job process, helping you guys understand how critical networking is. And I think Doug Anderson hit on this as a part of his CS Scholars. The researching vacant announcements. So to the question about where do you go to find this, we'll go through that. And then, right, core competencies and those things that you really need to build into a resume. And I'll actually show you a good resume that is a perfect format to apply for government opportunities. And then once you apply, how do you make sure that you're getting the right follow-up and the right information and detail for the announcement and vacancy that you've applied for? Job seekers. So here are my recommendations to you, right, in terms of setting yourself up and tracking. I would do research on the agencies you may be interested in, whether it be within DoD or federal, right? There's a lot of different agencies out there that you could go support, that you could apply to. Choose 4. Understand within those 4 what their mission is, what their values are, and what they're looking for in terms of the application process and requirements. You want to make sure that you're in alignment with what they're doing, what they're supporting, and then you want to make sure that those types of details are part of your resume and application to those agencies for those job announcements. Job titles. So there aren't necessarily job titles in the government like vice president, executive vice president. We have what's called occupational series and then government service pay scales. So I'll talk a little bit about this. There are different occupational groups and series, and there's a ton of them in the government. Each one of these different occupational groups has a description and very specific requirements about what is entailed and what is required to fall into this occupational group, series, or category. So, for example, I'm a computer scientist. What that means is you have to have certain levels of math, database, and computer science programming classes with that computer science degree to get that designation. Program management, you have to have certain levels of program management degrees and other things to fall into that qualification. One of the cool things, though, is that middle category of 2210 or information technology. Depending on the grade, depending on what the government may be looking for, there may be absolutely no degree requirements, some degree requirements, but more importantly, very specific certifications that would qualify you for those types of positions. And we'll talk through that. All right, let's talk about what this pays. What does a government job pay? Well, it's complicated. So there's this thing called a government service grade scale. And we'll talk a little bit about this later on, but there's different programs and different government service grades that you would qualify for based off of the type of job that you're applying for. So you can see here GS grade 1 through GS grade 15 on the left-hand side. And really, this is what's called a base scale. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated because this base scale applies to everyone throughout the continental United States and also in outside the United States. So then, depending on the location you're in or a foreign country you may be at, there's another percentage attributed on top of this to match what's called locality rates. So you may be, for example, a GS5 step 10, that would be 39,149 base. But then depending on the location you're in and the locality rates, you may be receiving up to 30 to 32% more depending on where you're at in the world. So hopefully that makes sense. And I can show everyone kind of the OPM site, Office of Personnel Management site, and where those additional details are so you can pull that down. The other thing is there's what's called different acquisition or different band classification pay scales that are in place. So that's what's kind of represented on the right. So depending on whether or not you're in a scientific or engineering type of position like me, you would be at a different pay band or pay scale. And this just happens to be one of those. In addition, you would also receive locality rate pay depending on where you're at. And then depending on what certifications or other things you have, there may be additional money on top of that with incentives and bonuses that are applied. Any questions or comments so far on kind of locality, pay, job titles? There's a lot here, and there's quite a bit more we have to get through.
So I have a question that came up just a little bit earlier. How often do employees get training on custom company expenses versus being required to get that training on their own? Does that go against vacation earned or more TDY pay?
I think, let me try to understand that question. So, for example, would you have to take leave or would you have to use your time to get the training or training courses and classes? In the government, it's identified as part of the mission, so it would be part of your normal work schedule or work time. If you had to travel for that training, it's paid for by the government. It's not anything that you would have to take as a part of leave or as a part of anything else that would go against the benefits you receive. Hopefully that addressed the question.
Okay, and another, what about pay for relocation?
Yeah, that's key. We'll talk about that one. Depending on the position you apply for, there may or may not be relocation incentives. And that you have to look for specifically in the job announcement. But there are positions where the government does pay for relocation.
That's it for now.
Okay. So cruising through here, this is just general rule of thumb with government positions. So up to GS4, right? Traditionally, it's 2 years of education above high school. So like an associate's degree, right, would qualify you to come into the door as a GS4. If you have additional certifications or other things, that may increase the grade level. And then there's also different programs that we have in place where if you have a bachelor's degree and it's in technology, you would come in as an intern and you would start off as a GS5, and within a year you would automatically be promoted to 7, and then the following year to 9. So, within a 2-year time frame, you can go from a GS5 to a GS9 and move up really quick. Same thing for master's degree. You can go from a GS7 to a GS9 to a GS11. So going back here, you can see you would go from maybe 37 to 45 to 55,000 in like a 2-year time frame. Those are pretty good bumps in salary that directly right, that are directly provided to you, provided your performance is in check and you're meeting the overall requirements. And the last one is kind of right, a PhD type of person who would come in that may have very specialized experience. They would qualify as a GS11, but depending on what they were brought in for and depending on their PhD, there may be other levels above that they would qualify for and get plugged into. The one thing to note, though, is there's generally very little room for negotiation in government positions. So they're going to take either your current salary and they're going to be able to match it, but they're not going to be able to take your current salary and increase it. Hopefully, that makes sense. The government definitely isn't in a position where they want to incur or pay more than what they have to, but they also at the same time want to create the incentives and have the opportunity to really bring someone in and give them room to grow. So there's different programs that are out there in the government to bring students on board within these different federal agencies and DoD. The first one is what's called the Pathways Program. And this really provides a clear path into federal service for students and recent graduates through federal internship or full-time jobs. These are opportunities that provide like meaningful training, mentoring, career development for a employee that's within the federal government. So you get picked up into this program, they're going to take care of you, they're going to provide you a mentor, they're going to give you a path, and they're going to help you in terms of your career development within the federal government. So these are really important in terms of coming out of college or coming out with an associate's or bachelor's degree for those who are really interested in government service. It's a pretty competitive program, but I'll show you where the information and detail is to do your research and figure out if it's a right fit for you. The other one is just a direct internship program. And there are certain amounts of positions in the government that have internship program opportunities, right? We have had high school students in internship programs. They had very specific skills in programming or had very specific skills within certain schools that both the NSA and other programs were looking at to help groom and develop and retain these students with not just an internship program in the government, but also reimbursement of college and graduate program work. So one of them that I was and am very aware of is those within cybersecurity. So, you know, if there's a very enterprising cybersecurity student that some of these programs through NSA see, they're going to direct that high school student to go to certain colleges and then bring them up through the ranks to be part of the overall cybersecurity workforce. I did a lot of work with the University of Tulsa, Oklahoma to help them with their program, and their professors targeted people in high school and brought them in and found ways to pay for college and other things that I was just completely taken back by. But it was an awesome program, and it's still in place today. So there's lots of different things going on out there depending on the agency. But these are all paid opportunities to work in federal agencies, and internships can be part-time, full-time, and they can be year-long or limited depending on the student and the circumstance. So those agencies hire those interns on a temporary basis for up to a year, and then they may have specific projects or other things that they need to complete as a part of that overall internship program. I've brought students on for the summer and then given them a break, right, for school, and then they can come back during Christmas and the holidays to pick up some work and make a paycheck. The final one is kind of the graduate level program. It's a 1 to 2 year development program designed for individuals who have received their undergrad and graduate or advanced degrees from qualifying educational institutions, right? So you pick up from Virginia Western, you go to Virginia Tech, you may go to JMU. This is where you would come in and have an opportunity to apply within 2 years of receiving your degree, and then you would basically be reimbursed for that degree upon completion. So it's really cool because you get the hours of training, you get the professional development, and then you're also completing, right, your degree and getting reimbursed for that degree and advancement within these graduate programs. The particular agency within the Department of Defense that I work for does do this, and they have scientific and engineering degrees that they'll pay for, or what they'll do is allow you the time to go out and get that graduate degree and reimburse you for it. So it's pretty cool. The final one is the Presidential Management Fellows Program. This is like highly competitive. These are for individuals who are really targeting themselves to go work in the White House or go work for the Senate or go be kind of a professional, part of a staff for maybe a senator or a cabinet level type of position. So these are just kind of some of the different opportunities that are out there, and to consider as a part of maybe what you're trying to achieve or what your goals are, provided you're interested in federal government or DoD. So, right, professional hiring paths. There's different schedules. There's different levels. There's veterans opportunities. And kind of what I want to do is actually jump in and jump over to USA Jobs and show you guys this website. So I have all of the links that I'm showing or will show you in the back of this briefing deck, and hopefully we can make the briefing deck available to students if they want it.
Absolutely.
But this is really your portal into the different types of jobs and positions that are out there. So if you recall, I talked about the different series or occupations within the government. One that you would be very interested in and you should probably write down is what's called information technology, or 2210. So if I come in here and I plug in 2210, there are currently 593 different positions that are out there within the federal government that are IT related. They're at all different levels, they're all different disciplines, and they're in all different types of locations. The Air Force has been on a huge hiring spree the past year and a half to fulfill not just IT, but also cybersecurity type of positions. So I'm going to pick on this one that came up. And there's some really key things within each of these positions that you guys really need to be aware of. One, there's what's called an opening and closing date. That is the amount of time you have to apply for the position, get your package in with your resume or any other substantiating documents that have to be part of your overall application. Everything must be in on time and prior to that closing date, or you will be eliminated for competing for that position. It identifies the grade level. So in this case, it's between 5 and 7. I would interpret this as you have an opportunity to come in at a 5 or a 7, depending on your experience. In this particular case, you may have the opportunity to move up from 5 to 7 within that 1 year period of time, depending on how they've laid out this position. It shows you the exact salary detail for this position based off of the pay scale that's over here. And the appointment type, it's multiple appointment types. So this is one of those positions that's full and open. In fact, many of you would probably have a good shot or qualify for this type of work, because what it's telling me is we're looking for the most qualified candidates to fulfill the opportunities that we have. And what they do is they leave it open for this amount of time so that they can get a bunch of resumes and a bunch of different types of people to apply in order to fulfill the positions that they have. Locations, there's 97 different locations. So that is a good indication to me. If they have a position, right, they're going to look at the candidates that are probably closest to those areas. or find the most qualified candidate and give them an opportunity for that position, depending on where it is. In this case, there is no relocation expenses reimbursed, so that's indicated right there. And is it telework eligible? No. So this may be a position where they're looking for someone who would qualify for a security clearance, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. It outlines the duties of this position. It's very nebulous, so I would assume they're looking for certain types of individuals with very specific skills or certifications. And then it kind of lays out the responsibilities, and these are very generic types of responsibilities. It gives you the promotion potential. So once you're in, you would have the ability to move up to a GS7. But again, once you're in, you have the opportunity to apply for other positions or to move up through other means within the government. The qualifications are laid out here. So again, this is one of those positions where there's no degree requirements that I'm seeing. They want you to have 3 years of general experience, 1 year of which was equivalent to at least a GS4 grade. What that really translates to is in the government, there's certain levels of responsibility and soft skills that they want to see. So like a GS4 grade would be someone who maybe has an associate's degree or has some experience in industry that would be willing to kind of move up or take different responsibilities on. They're looking for someone who has attention to detail, some customer service work. So this could be like an opportunity to go work on an IT service desk, to take phone calls, because they're looking for good oral communication, the ability to kind of identify issues and deal with very sensitive, controversial topics or people. And then of course, problem solving. So this to me would probably be one of those positions where you would start at an IT service desk and work your way up into the government. But it is not limited in terms of its appointment, and it is absolutely full and open to anyone who would apply for it. Any comments or questions kind of on, right, what a position looks like, a position description, and the details that you have to go through and really hone in on to better understand what you would be getting into and what you would be taking on here.
So the next question we have up is, how does working with the VA different from working with the DoD?
Well, for one, the Veterans Affairs and the VA are its own agency, though, right, the work of the DoD is the work of the DoD. The work of the VA is to support a veteran who's been in the military. Hopefully that makes sense. So there is some distinction and delineation there. And you have to look at the mission of the VA. The mission of the VA is to take care of and provide medical care for the soldier or the airman or the Marine that was in the military. The mission of the DoD is a lot different. So that would be your distinction or delineation there.
Okay. With the qualifications, the GS states a general idea. Sorry, so long. Let me see if I can get this out. With the qualifications, the GS states a general idea of required education and training, but where can we find specific certification requirements like Sec Plus, A Plus for a desired position or a certain path?
That's a great question. Let me find. So let's come in here and just plug in system admin, right? So there are 13 jobs that have system admin as a part of the title or description. I'm sure there's a ton more that are out there. But That question is a really, really great question. Here's why. There are very specific requirements and certifications needed to be a system administrator of a server within the DoD or within the federal government. Those qualifications do absolutely require A plus, Network plus, or some cybersecurity certification that would go with it to show that you have the right experience and the right training to be a system administrator over right, a server or within the network that you're supporting. And I'm trying to look for that quick. So it lays out the details here. Additional qualification information can be found from the right. So there's your PhD requirements. Not that you need a PhD to be doing this work. It's right here. So this position is designated as a cyber IT, cybersecurity workforce position. You must obtain and maintain credentials as described by the Secretary of the Navy for Specialty Area Information Assurance Level 2. So this particular directive lays out the requirements that you must have in order to be in that position. It is a wonderful 72-page document, but I would assume somewhere in here they've got some pretty nifty tables. I don't see anything else here. Here we go. So that position was a level 2, I believe. A level 2 would be intermediate journeyman. They're looking for a security plus and a bachelor's degree from an accredited university or CNSS NSTISI 4016 requirements. So I believe, and B, you can correct me if I'm wrong, upon completion of the cybersecurity program within Virginia Western Community College, you would have at least a security plus, and you would meet the CNSS requirements for this position.
Yes, assuming you take and complete your Security Plus as part of ITN 260, or shortly thereafter, you would in fact meet those credentials.
So that would answer that question. You generally have to do a little bit of digging, but right with that little bit of digging, you would know that you would meet the qualifications, and it was a level 2 for this position. Any more questions?
So the question, and I'm not sure what he's referring to, are the benefits and structure similar for those? I can only assume he means between the VA and the DoD. VA and DoD.
Yes, for the most part. The Veterans Administration may have different incentives or training that they would provide or be able to support. It just depends on the type of program and the type of position you would be applying for.
Great, thank you.
So just for fun, let's look at, this would be at VHA. So we'll get rid of this. Well, there's two different 2210 positions, right? So this is a GS12 position, I believe. It's a little bit higher in terms of the scale and responsibility. So this lays out kind of an exhaustive list of the things that they're looking for and what you would do along with the work schedule. Does not offer telework, does not offer compressed schedule, any of those fun things. Right, here are all the qualifications. Here's the things that they're looking for. There's a ton of information here that you would really want to unpack and go through to make sure you were qualified. Here's everything that they're looking for you to provide as a part of that. Some of this may or may not apply. VA positions, I'm going to be candid, they're a little difficult to get into because for the most part, the VA is looking for a prior veteran. And it does kind of make sense depending on the position because they want to put people in these positions who have relative experience, knowledge, understanding in dealing with the veterans that they're supporting. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to jump back. Well, let me do this. I'm going to sign in. And one thing, right, with this is you're going to have to go into USA Jobs, create a profile, and like most things in the government, it's actually pretty well updated and pretty well run. So with this, you have to create a profile, right? And there's nothing stopping anyone from going and doing this and putting it together. And if you're interested, I would advocate that you go and set up a profile, put your information in here, and get your different resumes sorted out. So typical type of address information, details, citizenship requirements, hiring paths. So I'm a prior veteran, right? Federal service, all this. I qualify as a computer scientist. I'm part of what's called business management and technical professionals. I have prior military service, right? My education requirements, I guess, aren't there, or I haven't added them. There's some demographic information. There's all these fun things. But the documentation, right? When you create or apply for a position within the government, and I have this on the slides, I would advocate you write your resume specific to the position you're applying for. And the reason for that is there are very specific keywords, keyword searches, and actionable type of information that they're looking for as a part of the automated processes they use to find the most qualified candidates. So, if you're going to apply for the Veterans Administration, you're going to want to look at that very specifically in terms of that announcement, job announcement, pick it apart, and make sure that when you submit your resume to that, you've hit the keywords that they're looking for. If you're targeting, like I said in the beginning, 4 different agencies, I would advocate you kind of adjust your resume to those different 4. And then depending on the position you're applying for, you may have to change the keywords within those different resumes you've put together. Why is that important? Because there's no one size fits all. And when the different entities within these different civilian processing centers that are looking for these resumes, they're looking for ways to find the most qualified applicant and we'll talk a little bit about that. But really, what that equates to is making sure that you have the right detail and information in there in terms of the search that they're doing to get you onto a list. And that list needs to be aligned with the most qualified applicant. They'll generally draw from a list of, for example, maybe 30 people applied. They'll give the hiring manager a list of maybe 10 or 15 of the most qualified individuals. And then they'll leave it up to that hiring manager to make a decision in terms of who they hire and provide that final offer to. I'm gonna go back here. All right, so we're back to the brief, right? Job categories and details. Differences to be aware of in federal. There's veterans preference. So if you're a prior veteran, you can have a 5-point or 10-point preference, depending on whether or not you just served, or depending on whether or not you served in a combat position, or received any type of campaign medal as a part of it. There's also what's called an occupational questionnaire. That's going to dig into what makes you qualified for that position. And you're always going to want to look at that and be honest with yourself in terms of, I'm an expert in this, or I have some experience in this, or no experience in this. And then your resume that goes with it. The other thing is what makes federal jobs different. It's the rules, it's the red tape, it's the preferences in terms of what they're looking for and being able to match that to the type of position that they're hiring. We walk through USA Jobs, how to do a search, how to prepare kind of that application based off of the different areas that they're looking for. I want to make sure with this, everybody understands that. So if there are any questions specific to USA Jobs, I'd like to know that now, B, so I can kind of help people navigate through that USA Jobs website.
Nothing specific to that at this
Okay. And then the job announcement review, we talked through that. So who may apply, who's qualified. Those are really important factors. Let's talk about clearance. So clearance is the trust that they have and the type of investment they're going to make in you based off of the level of information that you're going to be dealing with. So for example, this area of confidential, they're going to do what's called a national agency check. They're going to look at making sure you are who you are, that you are an upstanding citizen, you've had no weird arrests or issues or problems. And they're going to say, okay, if this person has passed all of those checks, they pay their taxes, they're going to get that level of public trust or confidential information that they can manage and deal with as a part of the position and their duties. Secret information, is another level of clearance that's applied depending on the position and what you may be involved in. And that requires kind of a lengthier investigation that'll go back 5 or 6 years. There's drug screenings, there's other things that are part of that. And then top secret really digs in really far back, like 7 or 8 years or more. And that looks at specific details, not just in addition to drug screening or other things, but also other areas with respect to social media now, and taxes and who you know specifically. So, the government is really interested with individuals who would have a top secret clearance if they have contacts with foreign nationals. And that's really key because depending on who that foreign national is and who they're part of and what they're into, it may absolutely disqualify you for a position. Any comments or questions with clearance related details?
So I'm gonna circle around to two of those. First, I'm gonna go backwards to for USA jobs, should we be putting our information on there now, then keep updating it until we graduate?
I think that you could absolutely do that. And I think, as you're doing your search and you're tuning your resume, I would be applying for those positions, especially the pathways positions or the internship program positions. So, yes, I think that is something you would want to pursue or do.
Okay. To the clearance questions, there's been quite a bit of discussion about clearance, and just to get your input on this, we're correct in assuming that a company typically sponsor, or the government typically sponsors you for your clearance. It's not something you go out and get on your own.
That is correct. So you have to be applying for that position and accepted within that position before they're going to begin that process. So in the period of time that they start and finish, you will get what's called an interim clearance or interim step, so that you can kind of do some things, but maybe not everything. And if you're going to work for a contract company, like I think they're outlining as a part of the question, the same rules apply. They would start you off, if you have no clearance or background investigation, with what's called an interim, so they can get you going, get you hired, and get you moving. If there are issues that they uncover or find, then you would be disqualified from that position and removed.
Also for clearance, how do we tell what we have?
Well, so I guess the question, and help me out there, relates to the actual details of the background investigation and knowing maybe what they've done and what the potential problem would be, or are we talking specific to when you look at a job announcement, what the level of clearance would be for that position? Because there's really two different coins there.
And we will wait for a response to that question.
Okay. So let me answer one key thing right here. If you've smoked pot or done some experimentation, that isn't going to hold you up from getting a clearance. If you've been prosecuted or nailed for distribution or some other things that I've seen, that is going to hold you up from getting a clearance. So I'll just throw that out there right now.
Okay. Two things. For prior service, did my clearance end the day I got out, or is it still good for a bit?
It is still good for a bit, and it could absolutely be reactivated with no additional investigation, provided it was probably within a year or from the time period of your clearance to the end. So, for example, secret clearances generally go for 5 to 7 years, or they're good for 5 to 7 years from the date that your clearance was provided. So if you did 4 years, for example, in the Air Force, you may have a year or two still left. You would have to get picked up into a position that would require that level, and you'd probably get an interim until they validated a couple things, and then they would give you that final clearance back for the remaining amount of time you would have with that investigation period.
Thank you.
All right. Common mistakes that are seen as a part of the application process. And this comes from experience that I really see for those who have applied. Not all requirements are met. Your experience is too long. Not providing all required supporting documentation. The qualification, right, that you're trying to tell me you have is just isn't right? Very clear. Um, your occupational questionnaire wasn't done, or it didn't meet the expert level maybe that we're looking for. You don't have the required experience. Your resume is too short or too long and doesn't contain the details. And then just proof of qualifications, right? So just because you put on your resume you have a security plus or A plus, doesn't mean you would still have those credentials. So, when you put that resume together, if you say, hey, I took the A plus or security plus on this date, and this is the certification, right, as evidence to go with it, that's generally a good way to demonstrate or show your proof of qualifications. What I want to do, and probably quick, is show you guys an example of a resume. So this is a resume of more of a seasoned professional who is applying for government service. And it really lays out the right format or approach you would want to take in terms of your government service application. So, this individual was applying for an IT program management position that I had. And you kind of see here, right? They come in with, hey, here's my level of experience and executive profile, which is very important and key, in my opinion, in your approach to putting together your resume. So, for example, if the position that you would be applying for is looking for certain things or certain degree requirements, you may want to put that right up front so that it gets picked up in the screening and those who are looking at the resume see that right away. And I think, again, Doug may have covered some of that as a part of his CS Scholars. The other thing is your professional experience. And if you recall, I talked about the key words or key wording. So when you look at that job announcement in USA Jobs you're looking for, there are certain key words within that you're going to want to pick up on and incorporate those as a part of your resume and application. And some of the things that I see here, like, for example, served as a chief technology officer, right? Leading a staff of 4 full-time equivalents and 5 contractors with a budget of $2 million. Those types of things are key words that I look for, or someone would look for as a part of what we want to make sure you have in terms of experience, because those are the things we are going to directly put you in and apply you toward as a part of the position that you're going into, if that makes sense. The other thing I'll highlight here is this individual put his education and experience and certificate, or his education and his certifications in the back. Now, one of the things that I do look for, like the ISC squared, right? Information System Security Consortium Certification, CISSP. I generally always look for the number that would go with their credential. So I'm a CISSP holder. My number is 53557. I put that on there so that anybody can look up and know that I absolutely have those credentials and that certification now as a part of the position I'm applying for. Those sort of things just help provide assurance that I don't have to go digging further and that the person who applied absolutely meets the requirements I'm looking for. I'm going to jump back. I'm going to go back here. So kind of coming back, right? And wrapping up the common mistakes, the format, the details, getting to the point, making sure kind of you look at knowledge, skills, and abilities as a part of that resume and putting that package together to submit for that job is really important. And these are just some of the mistakes you don't want to make. The other thing I'll hit on, and I'll do it kind of quickly, is making sure that you're networking. Right, I'm on LinkedIn. It might be good if you guys want to join or follow my network, because if there are positions, whether they be contract or government, right, my network would help you understand what those opportunities are and where they may be at, in addition to just having someone to ask questions and to know within the DoD, so that if you are looking for a job or positions, you've got someone you can connect with and fall back on. The other thing is government job fairs. They're probably not too many right now just because of COVID-19, though I do think they have done a few virtual job fairs. And you can, kind of create or lay out a strategy with respect to that. If I were going into a government job fair and I were looking for, candidates, I'm looking for people who ask the right questions. If someone came to me and was like, "Hey, are you doing any direct hire positions?" They were dressed, like they were wanting to actually get a job. They inquired about the federal job listings and contacts. They knew about my agency and mission. I'd be like, wow, that's someone who really hits with me, and I'm going to remember who they are and probably write their name down. And then your job fair resume, right? What work have you done in terms of your own social skills, shaking hands, making eye contact, smiling, being convincing, being authoritative in what you know, speaking clearly and to the point, and again, focusing your resume toward those 3 to 4 jobs, and making it very easy to kind of go through in terms of 1 or 2 pages. Those are all good things. One thing I do, and I think it's a really important factor, is this is kind of a Rob rule social media. And for those in my legal topics course, we do talk about this. Social media is free game. If I'm going to hire a candidate, I want to know what they're putting out, who they're involved with, and what they stand for. And I can tell you, when I was in private industry, and our counterpart here in Virginia Western can help back this up, Doug Anderson. We've reviewed resumes where I was like, we are not going to hire this person because they definitely put some really bad things out on social media. So just remember, perception is everything. And if someone has a beer in their hand and they're posting that's no problem. But if you're posting a picture with 30 cans of beer in front of you, that may be a problem. And that's based off the hiring manager or up to the discretion of the person making the decision. So just realize social media is a really important tool. And what you put out there and how you promote yourself is really critical. Comments or questions there?
All right, so I'm just in the process of deleting all these pictures of me behind stacks. No comments or questions at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to press forward. So core competencies for a federal resume, right? Soft skills make the difference. Be resourceful, be innovative, show kind of the things that you've done, whether it be in academia or even in industry, if you have that experience. If you've led an effort or you were part of the leadership in something, take ownership of that, lay that out, because really it's the foundation and start. And as a government employee, I want to see someone who's been working on their associate's or bachelor's degree and made the decision to lead the team through authoring a paper or doing research or supporting an effort? What sort of outside activities were they involved in? Were they doing things in their community? So those are all things that we definitely look for, that are great traits and qualities of a leader. The other thing is, again, depending on that agency, right? And I do have the Veterans Affairs in here, so that's perfect for the person who's kind of interested in that. Interpersonal effectiveness, like systems thinking and organizational stewardship, are really important to the VA, right? The way you handle yourself, the way you deal with certain people, right? Veterans may have different disabilities, different things going on mentally, and you're going to have to be prepared and on your toes to deal with it. Transportation Security Administration, there's lots of jobs there, right? Attention to detail, conflict management, accountability. Those are all things that they're really focused on. So there are differences depending on these agencies that you're kind of looking at, targeting, and where you want to go and get involved in. So again, finding the key words, the position descriptions, and pulling that all together, and basically being able to plug that in as a part of your resume is a really important factor in that overall hiring process and being able to get selected. So, kind of in this example, the keywords, this position is a product specialist. So right here in the mission statement, that that this is an operationally driven type of organization, and that's part of their mission. They do nuclear and non-nuclear type of things within a shipping yard, right? So there's operations, there's nuclear, there's shipping yard, and this is kind of at a division head doing scheduling of maybe different things that are going on within that shipping yard. And then the duties here, right? Serve as an assistant system manager for development, implementation, and operations. Again, there are just some key words you can parallel here to make sure that you're plugging them into your resume to make you the ideal candidate and stand out for selection. Do not use right one. Yeah, so I covered this, right? You want to focus your resume specific to that agency that you are trying to target or work with. And you may have to have 3 or 4 different resumes depending on that mission and the type of position that you're applying for. So private industry versus federal resume and format, right? In private industry, they want 1 to 2 pages. They want, in some cases, you to bold and underline things. They do not want your SSN or previous supervisor or salary history. That's part of your negotiation. Keywords are important: profit, motivation, product oriented, right? And really focused on getting the most out of you in support of, right, what they're trying to achieve. In federal, it's a little bit different depending on how much experience you have. It's a little bit longer. They don't want a bunch of bold or underline or graphics. They probably will require your social security number, your previous supervisor, your salary history, and those preferences we talked about. They want you to focus on knowledge, skills, and abilities. Keywords are imperative because there's searches and things within USA jobs that are used by hiring officials, and making sure you blend your accomplishments and duties with those details is really important. What to include in a federal resume: your job information, your personal information, your work experience, your education. You guys can kind of understand, the details and what the government is looking for depending on the level, the qualifications, and the experience that they're looking for and what you have to understand if you have a match with a position. Tracking and follow-up. This is kind of key. So your resume will go into one of three buckets: best qualified. And that's really important, right? This is the only group that's going to get referred to a supervisor or hiring person. So if there's 60 people that have applied, they're probably going to draw some sort of cut line with those keyword searches and other things. And the supervisor is going to get presented the best qualified or the top 10 individuals and make a selection from that. Well qualified is never going to get referred. So you got to be in that top bucket to be in the game. What do I, as a government employee, consider, right? Prior experience, interview, quality of application. But more importantly, let me show you very quick, if I can. Here we go. Sorry about that. This is an actual matrix that was put together to help inform on a hiring decision. So you can see, like, we were looking for very specific details in terms of, their level of information technology. Did they have 24 months? Do they have a bachelor's degree or not? Do they have a clearance? What are the technical issues or things that are part of their experience? Do they have knowledge of operating systems and data networking? Do they have cybersecurity experience, security information event management, right? Like Splunk, those types of things. Do they have any background in risk management framework or FedRAMP? What sort of certifications do they have? And we actually, use this as a grading scale to work through to find the top candidates based off of the ones that were already provided to me. So you can kind of see, like, this individual with the score of 37 really stood out for us. And that individual, in addition to a couple others, received an opportunity to interview. We actually had one person decline. We had another person we interviewed who had no social skills. So this individual, right, Johnny, was the guy who got the job. It's those things that we have to work through, prove, and show as a part of the hiring process and selection that are really important factors in the decision. All right, we're close to being done. We'll wrap this up. So, useful resources, right? USA Jobs, Office of Personnel Management, gogovernment.org is your gateway to really understanding as much as you can about the different internship pathways and opportunities that are out there within government to come on board. The gogovernment.org website is a great resource and a great wealth of information to use and follow. And then USA Jobs, this top one, is the way that you would go out, search for jobs, look for jobs, and use that front end to actually apply for the job. And then the Federal Resume Guide will give you some details in terms of how you would tackle and approach writing and putting together a federal resume. Final points, and you guys can read these, right? To get a government job, you have to work like mad and apply like mad. You're going to get rejections. It's just a part of the process. You'll never hear back for some jobs you apply for. Other job updates on websites are notorious for being out of date or wrong, though I've seen a substantial amount of improvement here. And I've harped on this. Number 4, the HR specialist is looking for ways to really get after the most qualified candidates. If you forget a document, right, they're not going to track you down. They're just going to disqualify you. Applications will disappear from websites after announcement closes. Print out the job announcement. Keep track of what you've done. Write down any referral dates. Write down any details that you can. If you get called for an interview, it'll just help you as a part of the process. And then you've got some records to work from if you're not successful the first time, but you've grown and learned to apply it for the second attempt. Deadlines mean something. Pay attention to those deadlines. Apply for jobs that require. If you apply for a job that requires a clearance, expect a little bit more time as a part of that hiring process, because those agencies will need to look at that as a part of your starting point, and you may have to wait for a period of time to get that interim clearance or step before you can start. And then if you're applying for a single position, you can use a basic timeline like this. You apply, the announcement will close, and it's going to take probably a month to 30 days before you're going to hear if you are certified for that position. If you have not been contacted for that position, you probably didn't get pulled or part of that listing for that job. So, feel free within that announcement to look for the contacts or hiring managers and follow up with them. Be nice and understand that they're busy, but generally an email about, hey, I noticed that this announcement closed 30 days ago. Have you pulled a list? Is there any sort of status in terms of a decision? Generally, they'll get back to you and let you know. So those are all important factors or final points to consider. With that, I know we're a little bit over time. I will open it up to any final questions.
Sure. Just a couple here. Let's see if I can get this all right to you. I work for the Veterans Evaluation Services as an intake specialist and in a disability examination company. Would that help me get my foot in the door with some of these jobs?
I think so, especially, with the Veterans Administration, right? They have to look at different soldiers or prior service military and basically rank order them for their veterans preference, the types of treatments and procedures and things that they would have to endure or be provided. So that is a pretty good entryway or experience to help qualify for a government position.
And another one, we had someone who really liked your Excel spreadsheet. Would like to know if there's any way the information can be stripped out and the spreadsheet shared.
Yeah, if you email me, if you're one of my students, you can go through Canvas or just rob@schadey.com, my first name @lastname.com. I will strip that out and I will provide that to you. I have no problem doing that.
All right, last call for questions, anybody? What are some good skills or habits to form?
Good skills or habits to form with respect to the application process are to be very well organized, to make sure that you are keeping track of what you've applied for, and you're constantly researching and preparing yourself for any interviews that would come up.
All right. And I think with that, we're going to have to put an end to the questions. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and your participation today. I'd like to thank you, Rob, in particular for this. This was great information. I took many notes. I'll be sending a resume to you shortly.
Awesome.
And Dr. Wolf, anything to share with the group? You're muted. This is the best conversation I've ever had with Dr. Wolf. I can't hear a word she's saying.
All right, now we're here. Thank you, guys. Rob, thank you very much. You're a part of our team, guys. We have these strong people that we have for adjuncts, and we're so thrilled that they put in the time to help our students and that kind of thing. And so I know I'm fading out here. It's kind of weird. But thank you very much. Please contact him. He'll be happy to talk to you. And we're on to 2 more weeks. We got one more session, I guess, right, B Bagby?
That's right. One more week after next, and that's it for this semester.
All right. Thank you very much, Rob.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here, and I appreciate everyone's time and the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.